And there we are. Hi, everyone. It's Sarithkin, and welcome to Murder of Dukes. Tonight, I am joined by my sister, who's going to help me host this one. And we have the pleasure of hosting His Grace. Oops, I got it. Kinggiyaidi. Sorry, I know. Kinggiyaidi. There we go.
Kinggiyaidi.
Yidai. God damn it. Sorry. I wrote it down and everything. I pronounced
It's
it.
difficult.
But, okay, so Kinggiyaidi from Lochac. And I'm really excited to talk to you because I have some friends down there and they've said some wonderful things about you. I don't know if you've ever seen any of these, but we always start with your SCA origin story. So if you can tell us where, when, how, why you found the SCA, that would be great.
Yeah. So I joined when I was like 18 in my first year of university. So I turned up at that's the University of Sydney, and I turned up at the orientation week, which is where you join all the clubs and societies. And there was a high school friend of mine who's now Countess Bethan, and she said, "Hey, come and sign here and join this club." So I went and signed up and joined this club, knowing nothing about it. And it was kind of a stroke of luck that I actually got into it because they wrote the receipt as Sinosula, which is the name of the college. But at that point, I didn't know anything about the structure. So I thought when I got home at the end of the day and went through my receipts, one of them said Sinosula, and I went, I don't remember joining a residential college, so I don't know what that is. So it's just through luck that eventually I actually turned up at some of the SCA things, and so I spent some really good times there. They had a regular arts and sciences night, which had singing and sort of all sorts of costuming and really great beginner stuff and meeting people and building the social club, which was a lot of fun. I eventually became a man at arms to Sir Alpha, which was Viscount Sir Alpha then. That's back when we were a Principality of the West, and joined his household, House Attica. I participated in dancing and some fencing before the Western fencing ban, um, and I actually got authorized in combat archery at a college war event so I joined in 94, and I think that event was in mid 94. So I think I got authorized for combat archery then, and I got authorized in full combat, like heavy combat, in probably an October long weekend event run by Sir Torgor Hawkhurst. Uh, maybe later that year. I think it was later that year. That would have been 1994, 95 maybe. I'm not sure. It all blends back then. I met the lady who would be my wife in 98. We together reigned as Princess and Prince, Sovereign Princess and Prince of Lochac in 2001. I got knighted in 2002 by Uther, got a really big buffet, knocked me out. I got married in 2003. I was the baronial seneschal of the Barony of Rony, which is the Metropolitan Sydney and Country New South Wales branch from 2004 to 2007, with under Rothgar and Helene, the Baroness and Baron there. I then became Baron and Baroness with Alfred, my wife, in 2007 to 2011. We had our first son born in 2009, had our daughter born in 2015. We reigned as King and Queen 2015. I became the Assistant Seneschal for Crown Events in 2016, and we reigned again 2018, 2019. I stopped being the Crown Events Deputy Seneschal, became a co-steward for Rowany Festival for 2020, and I was the steward for 2021. Both 2020 and 2021 have been cancelled, so there was a bunch of behind the scenes work around that. And then that brings us to the current day.
So are you stepping up for 2022?
I have said that I will not.
Okay. I was going to say that would be a lot. That would be a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to backtrack a little bit because you went through that really fast.
Yeah, sorry.
So your friend like introduces you to this club. Did you have any interest in medieval studies or anything like that?
I did not. I had no interest in history whatsoever. I didn't do any history in high school because, I did non-elective history in like year 7 or year 8. But after that, I was lured by the promise of a snow trip and took geography instead of history, so I didn't do any elective history and knew nothing about history. Um, she was a good friend of mine, and I was highly suggestible. Probably still am highly suggestible, so that's fine. But yeah, she's the one that I credit with my entire social life and some.
So when you first started, you said you went to some dance practices and stuff, but what really pulled you in? Was it the people, or what activity did you first sort of say, hey, I really like this thing?
When it boils down to it, I do things because people do things. So it was mainly the socializing. But I like to think I put effort into the actual activities themselves. I learned a bit of costume making, some dancing, some singing. I did a fair bit of singing actually. Um, yeah, I've done a few different periods, as most people have, I think. Uh, I started with Italian and then went to French pretty quickly, and I've always liked the land snake thing. So but I'm a bit reserved. So I actually did Swiss, which is kind of that with, you know, kind of that on the quiet.
Maybe
And
not so
then,
flashy.
yeah, not quite as flashy. That's true. Not quite as ripped. More stripy, less ripped. Uh, yeah, and then when we were Baron and Baroness of Rowaney, we kind of did the Gothic thing because it was kind of the classic middle period. Everyone can relate to it. When you go to things, you look medieval as opposed to Renaissance or classical or whatever. So we did that, and we stepped down that, started on doing a change, and we've been doing Mongol since then.
What got you interested in Mongol?
Um, the I guess there's a bit of me that likes kind of being the bad guy, being the rebel, which like I don't do that very well, so it's kind of laughable, but that's kind of something I like doing. Um, but the thing that has kept me interested in what I like to think of as the more primitive societies, and that I hope that's not an insult for anyone who just does Mongol, but if you're looking at the nomad end of things, then you could theoretically there was a lot less skill specialization, I find. So, like, I have a dream, I suppose, that I could learn to do everything that a nomadic Mongol would be able to do. Whereas I almost certainly can't do that with, like, any of the Renaissance societies, because they have specialists like bakers and shoemakers and fabric makers, and like all that is highly specialized, and there's absolutely no chance I can get to learn everything. But with a more simple culture, I think perhaps I could. I'm not saying I necessarily am going to put the effort into actually learning everything, but I could if I wanted to, I think.
I was going to say, are you going to raise some sheep and learn to make cheese and felt? And
I've made a little felt. I actually I don't eat a lot of dairy because one of the things that Asians don't do is process lactose very well, and neither do Mongols, so they fermented theirs. And I haven't got into like fermenting mare's milk yet or anything, but yeah, perhaps I will. I haven't yet, but perhaps I will.
So
how has it been doing a non-European persona in Lochac? Is that pretty accepted?
It was really fairly strange early on when I started doing it, because most of the known world has had the benefit of, really, I suppose, the Great Dark Horde. I understand they've been fairly big, so that Mongol culture is fairly accessible in most of the known world, but really it hasn't reached in Lochac very much. So fortunately, there's the internet now, and there's lots of information. That's great. But it was pretty strange. But in Lochac also, it's very forgiving. And to be honest, at that point when I started doing it, I had been a territorial baron, and I was knighted, and I'd been like sovereign prince. So people don't tend to say, "Hey, you don't do that thing. It's not right." Not to someone in my position. I mean, I know that people doing non-European, even up to fairly recently, have caught some flack for it, and that's really unfortunate. But it's kind of it's where the society started, so there's kind of makes some sense. It doesn't, like, some people come in and say, I expect a medieval thing. In fact, I expect a medieval European thing. That's what it said on the tin. You know, you're different from my medieval experience, and that happens, and it's unfortunate. And I didn't expect when the the preamble to corpora changed, I really didn't think that I wasn't like I went when it was going through the process. I went to myself, well, that's kind of nice, whatever, you know. But when it actually became in, I realized that I felt really quite good about it. I didn't really think about how acceptance and representation really affected me because you know I'm male and it's a thing that happens. Like I've been born and raised in Sydney in Australia, and I'm pretty Australian, and so I guess some people call that being a banana or a Twinkie. I'm yellow on the outside, white on the inside, and so representation hasn't really affected me a whole lot, but then it really did, and I guess I knew on the outside how I thought I should feel about it, but now I actually do feel it, and that's really great.
That's awesome.
I never knew it would happen to me.
That's really cool. So let's rewind a little bit.
Sorry, yes.
No, it's fine. I think this is all really fascinating. How did you get interested in fighting? Did your friend fight too, or?
Yes. Yeah, my friend fought, and back then it was just something that males were expected to do. So I went along, and really once I started joining it, and it was a social group, I really threw everything into it. I went to everything that I could fit into my schedule, which was most things. And I will admit that probably my academic advancement slowed because of it, which is unfortunate. But I had priorities, and they were what they were. So yeah, I got into fighting that way, and I'm a little competitive. So like once I started doing that fighting thing, I just wanted to get better at it because I always want to get better.
I can't relate to that at all. Were you athletic before you discovered fighting?
I was a bit athletic. I'd done gymnastics when I was a little kid, and that gave me a fairly good sense of balance, which I've appreciated throughout my life, which is good. I did some running, like in primary school, but I went to a high school that was very academic focused. So, like, frankly, there was a lot of non-exercising nerds there, and or maybe I was part of the non-exercising nerd faction of my high school. So no, I didn't really have much in the like. I think my school sports were like roller skating and table tennis. They're the ones I remember the most. I don't think I did some basketball too, maybe, but nothing, not really much in the way of contact sports or not hugely competitive. So no, I wasn't, but apparently I am.
So you fight and you do combat archery, right? And you said something else too.
No, that's it. I don't do rapier. Yeah, but it is combat archery that I do. I do. I guess I don't mind either of them. They kind of feel about the same. I mean, I'm a much better armored combat fighter than I am a combat archer. But we had a lot of archers on our first Royal Guard because the Mongol are all archers. Like Mongols are archers. They do the horse thing, the archery thing. I don't do the horse thing because I can't afford a horse. So we had a bunch of archers at our guards, especially, and they actually came to me after the reign and said, "Hey, we want to form a Mongolian archery unit under you." And I went, "That is really honoring and awesome," and that's it. So I have my squires that I teach like armored melee to, and I have a bunch of combat archers who are nominally under me, although there's like at least one of them is a much better archer. Like he's in the grant level archery unit, the Lochac company of archers, which is our pinnacle order for archers in Lochac. We don't have a peerage order of archers because no one does, but that's what we have, and they are essentially our peers in archery. And one of those is one of my guys. That's pretty awesome.
We have something similar. We have like the Order of the Grey Goose Shaft, and they aren't a peerage, but they're sort of treated that way. They're a polling order.
Yeah, I've heard of that order. So yeah, their name is reached down here. It's good.
Yeah, it's kind of cool actually because they get all the coolness of the sort of pure like respect without the job. So, or the meetings, I guess. No,
it's
you're right. There's
definitely a
still
job.
the job. Yeah, there's still the job. They still have the students and stuff.
Yeah. So the first time we reigned, I think, was when the fencing peerage came in. The Order of Defense was created then. So my wife and I created that in our kingdom, and there was it's an interesting thing that we had to decide what to do with the white scarves at that point, and we made the choice to close the order to new members. So the people in the order still have their rank and they had all their ceremonial, but we weren't going to make any more. We closed the order, and that's so that's so the Order of Defense could have all the benefits that are associated with the period orders, because until then the Order of Defense didn't have any tradition, so it was pretty bare. But the White Scarves had a title. They had Don, which is a special title. They had some pretty good ceremony. They had some pretty cool regalia, being the actual white scarves and whatnot. So they had many of the actual, and they were a polling order, so they had most of the benefits of a period order. So to keep the focus on the Order of Defense, we decided to close the Order of the White Scarf.
I think it's really interesting to talk to people that were reigning when that happened, because in our kingdom too, we have the Order of the White Scarf, and I believe they closed the order when they did the Master of Defense. But it's sort of odd because like the Order of the Grey Goose Shaft, they were really treated sort of as a peerage in our kingdom, and you had the dons and the students, and you had all of the titles already and the regalia, and it's sort of like, well, how do you reinvent that? It's just, and what do you do with these people that sort of reached that milestone but aren't, up to the peerage? And is it really sort of like a middle award now, like a grant level award, or do you make a new grant level award? Like, I guess like closing the order seems like sort of the right thing to do, because it doesn't serve the same purpose anymore, but it's sort of a really weird position to be in.
Absolutely. We are fortunate in that our kingdom has other grant level awards. One of which, the Red Ribbon, is actually defined in law as being for all martial streams. So it wasn't too hard for us to substitute that for people who are at that kind of skill and behavior level, grant level. So that was, yeah. In fact, the Red Ribbon was inclusive of period fence, even while the Order of the White Scarf was active. So I can't say what necessarily gave admittance to one or the other. Although that said, we did actually give someone a red ribbon for fencing during that reign, just before we closed the White Scarf. So anyway, yeah, there was a lot of discussion as to whether we should promote the entire Order of the White Scarves to the Order of Defense, because indeed in our kingdom too, they really were the pinnacle order. They were pretty much considered the period order.
Yeah, I think this, I mean, maybe people in my kingdom will disagree with me, but I really believe that too, that they were treated in every respect except for, formal getting a patent as a peerage before.
Yeah, absolutely. The same way here. So there was a lot of consultation in that reign about that. And we got to hear a lot of viewpoints, which was fantastic. We got a lot of really great feedback from the members of the order and from other people, and from people in the peerages of all the peerages, all the people in that order, and a whole bunch of the public besides. So it was really good, the way that we really appreciated the way that people felt that they could let us know what they thought, and that and for them to be comfortable in the knowledge that we would listen to what they had to say. We didn't do everything that people asked, because can't do that. But I think we did the best thing for everyone involved. Hopefully, cross fingers, touch wood.
So far, so good.
Yeah, look, the Order of Defense are really good. They've got some good traditions building up, and they've got a wonderful body of people in the order, and they're really fantastic. We very early on, we had them do similar things to the Order of Chivalry. So we created them at a May Crown event in the Eastern Isles, so in New Zealand, and we had them in the final rounds doing the marshalling with the chivalry that were present, and we had them do the salutes. And we were we managed to convince the first three to accept the buffet. So when we gave them chains because they were in permanent fealty. So that's a Lochac thing. Any of the bestowed peers can agree to make a perpetual oath of fealty to the crown and kingdom, and for that they're allowed to wear a fealty chain, so like a knight's chain. Yeah.
Oh wow.
That's cool. In our kingdom, the queen gives the buffet to the masters of defense, and it's
really?
Yeah, it's kind of cool to hear that another kingdom does the buffet because when I've talked to it about with other people, they get kind of at least the knights get a little twitchy about it because it's a special whatever. But it's actually really cool because the rapier community serves the queen like they really are, and at least in our kingdom they're the queen's champion. They have the queen's champion tourney, so it's kind of a cool way to do it. So
in our kingdom I think the crown shares a lot of the folk, like there's less focus on either the king or the queen. I think we have both our order of chivalry and our order of defense kind of both serve the crown, and there's not really that king queen split. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just different. So we did. I think if I recall rightly, I actually gave a buffet to each of the members, and my wife, the queen, that is to say, gave them a kiss on the cheek. So I'm not sure if either of those traditions are carried. I'm pretty sure there's not as many buffets these days. I don't think they get as many buffets, but I don't think I'm not sure the chivalry get as much buffets as they used to either. And there's a story about that, but we can.
We have our stories up here too. The whole buffet thing is it's interesting how divisive it is, and I've always been, it's just symbolic. It should be symbolic, and you don't have to prove how tough you are with the buffet. But
I think that it may be conceited of me, but perhaps I was instrumental in gearing that back to symbolic, because when I got knighted, it was Uther, and like I'm a 5'4" guy, and Uther is a god of walking amongst men, and I was actually kneeling on a slightly lower step than the stage he was standing on, and perhaps there was some slippage because it was a wooden floored hall, but he hit me pretty hard. I apparently flew, landed on the ground, lied down, got up once, got up twice. I actually only remember getting up once, but apparently I got up twice. So I think at that point people said, this is too hard. Why are we doing this?
Right.
There's much calmer buffets, I think, nowadays, perhaps.
Right. I had to take my husband to the emergency room after he got knighted. So
right. That is
he
pretty
lost
scary.
his memory. So for 4 months, or like the short-term memory for 4 months, and actually he doesn't even remember his knighting, and it's 10 years later. So
Yeah. Wow, that's
hard.
extreme.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a mistake. It wasn't intentional, but so there is reason why the buffet is divisive. But I want to talk about your height and how you've excelled, because there is a lot of feeling in the SCA that fighting is a big person's game, and that if you're over 6 foot and 300 pounds, you have all these advantages, which is sort of true. But it's really cool to talk to people who are 5'4", who have been super successful. So sort of tell me about your path, and when did you decide that this was something, I know you're competitive, but this was something that you're going to be good at, and that you were going to like be a knight or a duke or whatever?
So I got squatted to Alpha, and he's good, and I kind of wanted to keep up with him, which is great because he's really good. He's not terribly tall. He's like 5'8", I think. He's not terribly tall in Lochac. So maybe that helped. But I got to admit that I have the unfair advantage in that I am left-handed. Okay. So that is a huge benefit. That's more beneficial than I'm pretty sure my lack of height makes up for. So I guess I got the easy path because I'm left-handed. But I mean, I used to, in fact, I probably still do something I call the hat technique, which is to say I use a center grip shield and I kind of stick my shield up here and like on my head, and for a short amount of time that's really effective. Like when I'm in close.
We call that the sombrero out here.
The sombrero, yeah, that's fantastic. Of course you do.
Duke Craven is known for that, who is also a shorter lefty. I'm not going to say he's short, but he's not 6 foot plus. So
yeah, well, yeah, because I don't get a lot of shots coming down at my shield side, leg side, so I can focus my shield defense kind of this region to this region down to this region on me.
Did you go through any struggles with being shorter? Like, was there any times where it felt like an obstacle for you?
Yeah, sometimes, and definitely now against like some of the big guns like Duke Neil and his erstwhile Majesty Theodoric, and
Guy.
and the King now, King Roland. They're all really tall guys, and I am always worried about when I get in close. If I don't get my stuff done in time, then they're going to wrap me, and their arm reach means I just absolutely cannot defend that. So, I just kind of got to be fast.
Is footwork something that you focused on?
Yeah, a little bit, but in the middle, like after you become a beginner, we found that we didn't focus on footwork a lot. Just as long as your weight is kind of over your feet when you want it to be, that's pretty much all we did. I mean, it was a lot of like Alpha taught me a bunch of lateral movement, which is pretty important, but not specific like foot placement. I mean, that said, I've developed a bit of a science about foot balance and how it explains it, but I'm not sure it's necessary in the middle. Like you got to know what how it works, and then you learn, you work on things that you can do with it. But apart from that, we didn't really do footwork a whole lot, I don't think.
You said you have something about foot balance. Do you think of foot balance separately than just balance in general?
Yeah, so I think of I've recently been teaching the fact that you got 2 balance points on your feet. So you got the ball of your feet at the front behind where your toes are, and you got the heel. So you got the 2 points for that foot, and you got another foot with 2 points. And so the placement of your feet maps out like a quadrilateral, and the kind of the dimensions you have of that kind of dictates the amount of force you can apply in each direction. So there's times like some people started. I remember learning early on by Sir Damon, a very forward and back stance. So he would teach his guys like your shield foot kind of like that, and your sword foot like that, and there's a lot of like up and down vector there. So you can go forward a lot and you can go backward really fast. But if you had to go to the side, you don't have a lot of force that way. So you have to kind of lean over and then fall, because like all of walking is just delayed falling pretty much. And that's the way I look at changing my balance.
That's cool. Actually, I went to Branos's drill practice on Zoom last Sunday, and we were all talking about the balance point on the ball of the foot. So that's really pertinent. It's cool.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Branos actually came out here while I might have been a night at the time, but he actually visited Lochac for a little while and taught in a few cities, and it was really fantastic. He's a really great fighter.
Yeah, and a great teacher, and he's just so selfless with his knowledge and his time. It's pretty incredible.
He really is. I agree.
Yeah. So let's talk about you. After you got squired, how long did it take you to get knighted?
So I got squired in 90. I think I got squired in 95 or 96, and I got knighted in 2002, like beginning of 2002. So it's like that 7 years or something, which was I think that seemed like the normal amount of time. I was actually bumbling around a bit, not working really hard, just kind of keeping up with my peer group and doing enough that Alpha didn't sigh at me too much. And then Uther came out to Lochac, like as king, before he was knighted. So that the whichever reign it was, maybe it was his first reign as a squire. And then it occurred to me that, you know, like the only thing holding me back was like the desire to really do well, as opposed to just being able to beat my local people, to actually like really excel. So I really credit Uther with actually being an example of who I could be, and decided to go at that. Which I should definitely make sure that I offer an apology to Alpha. He's been a teacher in all that way, but for some reason it was just Uther coming out as King being a squire that made me go, yeah, you know, I could really do this.
So was Uther's visit like the catalyst for you to like start training to win Cornet?
Yeah. No. I actually won Cornet.
Before
I won Cornet before that.
Okay.
Actually, no, you're right. It must have been that impetus for me to do that.
How did your training and your focus change after that?
I decided that I should be able to beat Alpha. Like of all the best people at my training, Alpha was top dog, and I went, look, he's just like, yeah, he's a knight and he's a great person and he's a fantastic fighter, but he's only mortal. I could kill him. I should, you know, work out how to do that and do that. And so yeah, I refined my stuff. I at some point I changed to a center grip shield, because when I started it was a bunny round. It was kind of that half round, so that half square, half round thing.
The bunny.
Yeah, it's like half of a square on top of half of a circle. So it's not
very
long
Western
enough to be
shield.
a big... Sorry?
Very Western shield.
Yeah, that's no surprise, because we're a principality of the West. But that is, in my opinion, the worst shield. So at some point, Alfred decided his household was going to do Vikings, so we all went to center grip rounds, and that really worked for me. Like as a left-hander, I could probably go on for a bit about how center grip shields are the best left-hander shield.
You should do it.
Okay, so when you present your shield in the front, you've got, you know, you can hold it. You can only hold it so far, and what you really need to do, actually, something that I was taught by Sir Hugo Little, was with my bunny round. Like, so bunny rounds are normally kind of there. He convinced me to move my grip back so that I was further away from that front edge. And he's also a left-hander. So when he went like this, right, he had the shield edge out here, and he had much better defense. And that was a real improvement as far as the bunny round goes. But when you have the center grip, then you can tuck your hand down about around where your hip is, on what is like the target area that a right hander is going to hit, and you can actually like put most of the shield basically by your side, protecting against the wrap. And it's that kind of flexibility that really, you know, that when people reach around to do that wrap, like when the shield is the edge of the shield is not out here, it's behind you, and that makes it very hard for them to do that. And that's like wraps are a real weakness with people who fight on the same side. So left-handers versus right-handers, wraps are a big thing. So when you cut out that bit, then suddenly, you know, everything gets a bit easier. So center grip shields, definitely. In fact, I recommend them for everyone. I think center grip shields is basically an extension of the hand that's holding them, and it's a natural instinct for when something comes at you that you don't want, you stick your hands in the way, because you don't want to catch a baseball in the face or whatever. You stick your hands up. Everyone does that. Like everyone goes, they cower like this. So basically, a center grip takes advantage of that like instinct to stick your hand in front of your hand and your arm in front of your face, and puts a big protective thing there. And I especially think that for beginners, taking advantage of that instinct lets them focus on their sword work more, which is, there's so many more moving parts in the sword side that I think it's worth being able to deprioritize concentrating on the shield work. Because if you use a strap shield, you're actually steering the shield with your elbow. So you got to worry about, especially so with a round it's all the same. If you don't have a round, you got to worry about the tilt of your hand. But with a strap shield, you got to worry about the tilt of your whole. So your elbow's driving it. And when you have a strap shield, the most you can move is the range of movement is the length of your upper arm. So you can move it this way, or you can move it that way, and you've got that much. But if you're holding it in your hand, I've got that through to that, plus the width of the shield on both sides. So I really think center grip shields are the best shield. And I see a lot of center grip heaters these days, and that's fantastic. I made a center grip heater, and Alpha broke it on the first day, so I haven't made another one.
My squire fights with a center grip heater, and I always tell him that he has the worst of all the worlds. So I don't know if I agree with that, but
yeah,
he's very stubborn though. He loves it and he stays with it, and that's fine. So
yeah, my the shield that I'm using most often is now a center grip rectangle, which I should have brought up from the workshop.
Those are very big up here.
Yeah, very popular. Fantastic. Yeah, I'm really loving it. Although I am better with the center grip round, but I want to really learn to get better with the center grip rectangle. The corners and the lack of weight. Yeah, when I was first constructing it, or in preparing to construct it, I was asking people what are good dimensions. I was kind of expecting people to say shoulder length and whatever to whatever, like kind of chin to crotch, or some sort of quasi scientific sort of measurement. And like the 4 or 5 people who use it, because it's not very common in Lochac, so the 4 or 5 people that responded to me said, make it so that it fits in your suitcase.
Yes.
And I went, really? Is that it? Okay, well, so I made it big enough to fit in the largest suitcase I had, and that's the size it is.
That makes a lot of sense for your kingdom. Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our conventions are shoulder, chin to crotch, so most people do that here, because then they don't have to remake their shield when the conventions are enforced. But yeah, that's funny. Super funny. So tell us about how you trained and how you trained for cornet and crown.
So I honestly, sorry, I can't actually remember how I trained for cornet now. It was 20 years ago. But we used to have
that long ago.
we used to have a fighter practice in the backyard because I actually lived in a share house with Alpha in 97 to 98 or 96 to 98 or something, and we had a fighter practice in the backyard there mainly for the household, but it was open to people from the barony who were interested. And at the time, I think there wasn't a weekday baronial practice. There was one on Sundays, which I went to a few times, especially when I was a rank newbie. And there was a practice held by the College of Snow, or at least in the property on the grounds of Sydney Uni. So it probably was a baronial practice, and I went to that. But Alpha's got a lot of experience, so he could say to me, you're going to fight these kind of people. There'll be, you got your long range snipers, and you got your close range brawlers, and you got and he couldn't really do tall people, but that's not a problem. Or he's still taller than me, so I guess I got the benefit of still being able to fight against tall people a little bit. And so he had the flexibility to go, I'm going to pretend to be this other fighter, and he was great for that. And there's other people in the barony who are good. Roni, being Sydney, is where the SCA started in Australia, which was slightly earlier than it started in New Zealand, but they didn't join up until 2002 or 2003, about the time just after we went Kingdom. New Zealand joined Australia in Lochac. Yeah, he could pretend to be other people, and he was great at that. For training for Crown, I was already a knight by then, so I just, I did the sentry drill. That was probably a big change. So 100 blows on the Pell every day for 100 days, and I do the 1 to 6 Pell drill, the two shot combinations 1 to 6. Instead, I do 1 to 7 because I added a slot because I was at a fighter practice and Duke Edward said, "Why don't you throw slots?" Sorry, I was teaching some new people the 1 to 6 or they were probably not all that new. I was teaching some people the 1 to 6, and Duke Edward said, "Why don't you have slots in there?" And I said, my response to him was that I said, "Well, I don't really throw them." And he said, "Well, you don't practice them. That's why you don't throw them." I went, "That is very good advice." And so I added slots into my 1 to 6 range. So it's 1 to 7 now. And I found that if there's 7 locations and you have permutations of 2 hits, you got 49 in that permutations. There are 2 hits in each, so that's like 98 shots. So you do one lot of the 1 to 7 plus catch up on a couple of things you did wrong, and you've made your 100. So I would do that in the morning as when we prepare our kids to go to school and whatnot. I would take 8 minutes out of the morning routine and go down to the backyard and do my 100, and then come back and carry on with the rest. So I got used to holding a sword a lot, and I'd say that was probably that plus the just fighting the people every week. Only once a week though, so it wasn't huge. But by then I was already a knight for a dozen years or so.
Did you do any watch any videos? Because you're so spread out, it seems like that would be the best way to see fighters from other areas.
We did some of that certainly, but I don't think a lot of people tend to. At least even in Lochac, we don't really have a tradition yet of videoing our regular fighter practice nights. And now that you put it like when you lay it out boldly like that, it's really a fantastic idea, and I should probably encourage that more. I really should, with every fighter practice around the country. Well, in fact, around both of our countries, because obviously we're 2-country kingdom.
We are a very heavy video viewing kingdom.
Fantastic. That's a really great idea, and I should bring that here more often. When we can all get back together.
Yeah, it's just a way that you can up everyone's fighting level, right? Because the more you share, the better everyone gets, and then they can see what you're doing, and so you have to get better too. And it's not like relying on tricks, right? It's about skill and skill building. So
yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the training like in my early days, so probably up until we were knighted or something, was there was a lot of meat grinders, sort of king of the hill thing, and everyone would just like you just go to practice, and you get into a meat grinder, and a meat grinder was everything. And there was some tutoring and some coaching, but generally all the fighting was meat grinder, and that was really great. I think we perhaps lost that so much. There's a lot more individual people focusing on fighting other people. People focusing on fighting one other person, which I guess works from a social aspect because you really, I don't know, I guess it's more comfortable to fight one person that you feel willing to ask to fight. But fighting everyone, I don't know. I think it's really good. One of my friends, who's one of Alpha Squires, thinks that a meat grinder means there's too much waiting in line and not enough actual fighting. And I hear that. That's true. But as you say, the watching is very instructive too. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's as easy to understand. I'm not sure people understand the value of watching as much as. I mean, I don't know if we did back then either, but we did a lot of watching, and maybe that helped. Don't know.
Do you think that I know watching Sir Rifkin come up in Ontir, the early days of fighting were very much just it was like a beating fest that you had to survive. It was like a gauntlet you had to go through, and there wasn't a lot of skill being taught. Is that similar to what the meat grinders were for you, or was there also skill being taught as well?
There wasn't. So calibration is probably lighter in Lochac than it is in many of the kingdoms, and I'm not sure like that's just out of what I hear. I've been to Penzik once, and I haven't really been to any other events out of Kingdom. So it's a bit hard. It's hard for me to say, but from what I hear, we hit and take lighter. So I don't get the feeling that it was beating up very much. Meat grinders certainly meant you got to face a lot of different. Like you got to face all the skills that were contained by all the people who attended your entire practice. So I think the propagation is pretty good for skills there. Although that said, people usually bring only their best to a fight. So it wasn't really a broad skills thing. I think that's transferred by that sort of fighting.
Right.
That needs more training, I think.
Did you train the mental aspect of your fight in the tournament focus, or was that something that came naturally to you?
It's a lot easier to be a tournament fighter than it is to be a war fighter, simply because there's many more tournaments and tournament-like things than there are wars. I love war. I think it's fantastic. It's my favorite thing. But it's true. There's just not as much of it, and I feel that very keenly because I do a bunch, and I did some combat archery, and I have a bunch of people whose primary interest is combat archery. So I know that I can go every week to go and get a fight, and most weekends I can get I guess most weekends I could get a fight if it weren't for the pandemic. But but being able to do combat archery is much rarer. There's a bunch of wars, and I made sure that there was a baronial war practice happening once a month for a couple of years, and it's now taken over by my guy Rafe, who's the guy in the Lochac, the Kingdom Lochac Company of Archers. So he's the good one in Sydney, and he travels quite a way because he lives out in Mudgee, which is like, I think it's like 4 or 5 hours drive from Sydney. So he'll come down for a war practice, and he'll stay in Sydney for the day, for that evening, and then go back the next day. But he's an old guy and he's retired, so he's got time to spare.
When you went to Penzik, were you king? Did you get to lead your troops in a major war?
Actually, no. I went to Penzik because a bunch of House Attica people were going, so I went with the household, and that was pretty much after I, because we reigned from January through to July, and then I went to the Penzik just immediately following that. So I was fortunate in like being able to hang out with our successors, Stefan and Branwen, and they were heaps of fun. Like I know you've interviewed Sir Stefan, like Duke Stefan, and that story he has of going to the Commedia dell'arte, I was his guy there, so I wandered in with him, and then they asked me what I was doing because I had a big night the night before, so I laid down on a bench, and they asked what that guy was, and he said he's with me. Yeah, and I was with him.
Stefan is amazing. Like what an amazing person. Yeah.
He's fantastic, and like we are so fortunate in Lochac to have him. He's a treasure. He really is. Yeah. And Branwen is too. Like Branwen is definitely. She is waiting. She's on vigil to be admitted to the Order of the Laurel when we can finally all get together. She's a fantastic tutor. Yeah, they're both wonderful people. They really are.
So are you guys back down in lockdown? Because I know you guys had a crown in January.
We did. We had the first crown in the known world just recently, and even that was fraught with difficulty because at that time there was an outbreak in Brisbane in Queensland, and the tournament was in Canberra in the Australian Capital Territory, which is within the state of New South Wales, like it's its own territory within the state. And there were some people who came down from Brisbane, arrived in the territory, and like couldn't go to the event. So they traveled all the way down, and like at that very last like hurdle, they had to stay secluded. So that was really unfortunate. But yeah, we did. So I wouldn't say that we had a crown as normal finally. No, it wasn't quite. It was less than that. But the barony of Roni hasn't gone back to fighter practice yet. Really, we had our fighter practice site commandeered by a humanitarian food provision organization, and so they're using it full time, and that's great. They're a much more worthy a cause than we are, but we are currently seeking a new site for fighter practice. There's been some smaller fighter practices happening around the place with much smaller numbers, but nothing barony wide yet. I believe Brisbane has got its practice up and running again, although they might have stopped for the moment. Western Australia is back. I understand they've been very good about their lockdown procedures. Yeah. So there are some, but it's not everyone's. It's not back to normal yet.
We like to live vicariously through you. It was awesome that you guys live streamed your crown.
Yeah, we all watched it.
Yes.
That and the banner.
So what was your favorite part of reigning?
I really enjoyed being able to bring a Mongol spin to it. We wrote ceremonies, and we rewrote the vast majority of the award ceremonies, and we worked with the Queen Leodan at the time and she wrote the handover ceremony, and that was really great. We tweaked a couple of things. This was our first reign, and we when we came in, we had our guard run in and surround the entire court with bows kind of drawn but not properly nocked. But it was like we really took over the court by force, and it was a huge amount of fun, and all props to Duchess Leodan for writing that. But yeah, we had a lot of story to go with it, where we would, we were in place, but there were the rebellious baronies, so we had to go around on our progress and subdue the locals, and it was really fun bringing that story to the kingdom.
That is cool. What did you do for your second reign to top that?
Well, we had a plan. Our plan was to do less of the war thing and more of the sport thing, because Mongolia has this yearly festival of archery and horse riding called the Nadam Festival, and we wanted to basically do Nadam and go around places and see them do these sports and whatever. But at that time, there was a really big sort of racists and bullies and not the Trim Gate and all that kind of happened in that reign. So we actually had to redirect a bunch of our energies to making the place, we had to shore up procedures, and we changed a few laws here and there, and so we got to bring much less of that story to Lochac in our second reign. It was much more administrative. We fixed up a bunch of the finances things, so it was a bit nerdy, the second one, and kind of making sure the hand was on the tiller, very firmly on the tiller and seen to be on the tiller. We have some really great people in Lochac, so fortunately we didn't have to fight too many people about doing the right thing and being seen to do the right thing.
That's good. So we're almost at an hour.
My goodness.
I know it goes quite fast, doesn't it? Your service geek, before you're a Pelican, and before we went live, we were chatting a little bit, and you were talking about being the autocrat. Is that what your service geek is, autocrating events, or are you sort of a multi-purpose Pelican?
Not at all. My my service is mainly in holding offices. So for a while I was the assistant seneschal to the kingdom seneschal for crown events. So I'd contact groups and try and get bids for crown events, and make sure that was all in order and help them with that. And I've been baronial seneschal of Roani. I've held a couple of, I think was back in the early days. I was deputy Earl Marshal, so that's deputy Kingdom Marshal, and I think no, that's probably it. So I think it's more. Oh yeah, I ran two inquiries into the kingdom finances to try and work out whether like we have a kingdom levy. So on every adult who attends an event pays, I think, $1 to the kingdom, like on top of their site fees and all that, and their membership. There's also a kingdom levy, and so our early examination was, how do the kingdom finances work in terms of the money going out for travel fund, because we've got a fairly substantial travel fund because Australia and New Zealand is a big place. Like the area, like the area of the USA is like 9 million square kilometers or something, and Australia and New Zealand put together is about 8.6. So we're about the same size, and there's a big gap between Australia and New Zealand. So our flight costs are fairly expensive, which means it's quite expensive to range when you want to visit every place. So we had to look at like the effect that the travel fund had on the kingdom's finances and the ways we could ameliorate its issues. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we fixed in. Hey?
That's a tough job. Whenever you have to look into the finances and people get twitchy, that's tough.
Yeah. Well, in the first inquiry, I remember trying to contact a bunch of royal peers to see how much they spent on their reigns, and hardly anybody actually remembers. Like I was
going to say that really, probably went over really well.
Yeah, it really is in the 10,000s, and a lot of people, a bunch of them, kind of stopped looking at how much they were spending on the reign because it was too painful. And I understand that because it really is very expensive. It's a big commitment in Lochac. But yeah, that, and the second time around we actually fixed some stuff because when the kingdom levy came in, no one really had enough data to work out whether it would actually pay for everything. So we used to have the kingdom was funded by half the profit from crown events, and part of like the development of the levy was to spread that out, like spread that out. But it took a while for the laws to be changed so that the kingdom events weren't also paying money. So for a while we had both the kingdom levy and half the profit from crown events. So that's something we fixed in our second reign. We took off the half profit from crown events, which would make crown events much easier to run. Much less expensive for people to attend, and much less expensive to run. So the more people turn to up the crown events, and the levy, like in my opinion, the levy should be able to cover the levy is a much fairer system than half the profit from the crown events. So we wanted to make that the principal financial instrument of the kingdom, as opposed to a few events a year.
I love that because your kingdom probably is the same as ours. Is the crown events are the biggest events, so they're hard to run. They're hard to find sites for, and then you have to carve off most of the profit to the kingdom. So I love the levy. I think that's a really great way to spread it out and to not make there be a disincentive for taking on a crown event.
Yeah, actually, our crown events are our second biggest events. Our first,
Rowan is your first, right?
Yeah, well, and not just Rowan. So there's the class of events that Rowan is in. There's Rowan Festival in Sydney, Australia, and there's Canterbury Fair, which is held in February in Christchurch region, South Island, New Zealand, and there's Great Northern War, which is held in Brisbane, which is Queensland, which is up north on the eastern seaboard of Australia, and that's held in June. And there's Spring War, which is held in Mordenvale, which is kind of in Newcastle, which is north of Sydney in New South Wales, and that's in October. So there's those big events, but the next category below that is all certainly crown events. Yeah, there's a lot of infrastructure at crown events because like you need space for tourneys, and you need the feast, and you need space for ceremony, and you need meeting rooms, right? There's meetings and meetings and meetings. So yeah, I'd say that's the order. I'd say the big wars are the most expensive thing, and the crown events are next to that. But yeah.
So what was your least favorite thing about reigning?
Least favorite thing? Well, there was a couple banishments, and they're never fun per se. Like the banishments were right to do. There's no question about it. We absolutely wouldn't have done that if it wasn't. But
it's unpleasant.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, it's great that we clean house. That's absolutely wonderful. I wouldn't shy away from that at all. But it's a pity that it has to happen. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I really want to repeat them here.
No, that's fine.
The banishments, I'd say, and dealing with the whole potential Nazi thing in the second reign was also not fun. But yeah.
So the Black Duke wants to know how many people you generally have fighting at your wars.
I seem to recall that we get about 100 at Roni Festival Wars. I can't actually remember if that's 100 aside or 100 in total. I seem to remember that there have been ones with 100 aside. So we get like, I think our biggest number that turned up to Roni Festival, which is our biggest war, was about over 1,000, but not much over 1,000, like 1,100, 1,200. And we probably had like 100, maybe 150, maybe aside at those ones. Our wars are like, 1/10 the size of Pennsic. Maybe that's actually
right?
Yeah, maybe that's actually overstating it. So we're pretty small.
Is there, Shaxi, did you have any other questions you wanted to ask?
No.
Okay.
I could deep dive into Naadam Festival and Goat Ball, but that's okay.
Yeah, so Naadam Festival is awesome, and we actually want to visit one time. We've got a friend of ours who has visited the Naadam Festival, and they had wonderful times, and we really want to go. So we devised so there are three main events in the Naadam Festival, and the real one are horse riding, or like a horse race, like a big marathon horse race, usually with kids on the back, because they're lighter, I don't know, and archery, which is actually like bowling with a bow and arrow. It's like 10-pin bowling. There's a bunch of these little light things that stack they're they're cylindrical things. They're like tin cans or something. They're not actually metal. They're like, I think they're braided rawhide. These braided rawhide little baskets and you got to shoot your arrow all the way down there, and 60 meters away you got to knock over as many as you can. And so it's really like Skittles with a bow. And the other one is wrestling, and the traditional Mongolian wrestler has like bikini brief shorts and like a matador short jacket thing and big boots, because everyone wears these Mongolian boots. So,
but the chests are completely bare. The jacket is just sleeves and a bag.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty funny.
It's awesome.
All right. Yeah. Did we not talk about anything that you would like to talk about?
Well, I love me, and we've been talking about me, so I think we're good.
Okay. Well, let's look at your sword. Did you bring your sword with you?
Okay. Yes, I do. Here's the one I prepared earlier. So this is my sword.
It's gold.
It is gold. It is gold. So there's a supermarket chain called Aldi, and they sell random stuff at times. And before our most recent reign, they have a metallic gold tape, and our Kingdom AOA level award for armored combat is called the Golden Sword. So, like, what's the point of reigning in Lochac? I said, if you can't have your own golden sword, right? So yeah, it's gold at the moment.
I would be all over gold duct tape if we had it here.
We need to find that.
I'll send you some. We bought all the tape we could acquire from all the Aldis that we in our area. So still have a few rolls of this. But before I made the gold sword, I actually I was using clear gaff tape on the sides because I had this thing where I don't mind us doing the whole non-lethal combat thing, because one of the things I did when I was like developing was that I started trying to organize some stuff out of the King Rene's book of the tournament, and they have the horde fighting, and it's all non-lethal, and it occurs to me that I would much prefer to do a faithful recreation of non-lethal combat as we do, as opposed to have a slightly poorer representation of lethal combat, because then you don't have to worry about people getting up, because in a non-lethal combat you expect people to get up, have a drink of water, then come back later and come beat it up, so it doesn't feel as weird. So and in keeping with that, I most of the time my sword has clear tape on it, so like it's got colored edge tape, but I'll actually have clear on the side and not worry about like the look. I don't mind the baton look. Yeah. So yes, it's currently gold, but through most of my sword history, I'd say most of it probably, I have clear tape is what I usually use. So this is I actually measured it. Where did I put it? So this is 34.5 inches, and it's also got 2-inch worth of thrusting tip on the top. And this is actually this is a 3D printed thrusting tip, and
Whoa.
it's made by a guy down in Melbourne called Hugh de Fortismane. And I'll open it up. I don't know if you'll be able to see it very clearly.
Yeah.
But it's got like this mesh matrix.
Cool.
And you have to look at the side. So it's got this mesh matrix. There's heaps of holes. It's spongy. It's really spongy. And okay, this one is ripping and dying, and that's part of why I have this leather retaining strap over the top, because like sometimes I'll hit with a tip and the idea is that this leather stops the top from ripping off. But there's nothing in it. It's all the same nylon. I think it's nylon. It's all the same stuff. So like even though it's cracked and half ripped off, it's still pretty safe. Like it's so far I haven't had it bounced, put it that way. But maybe that's because I'm a knight and they don't ask. Yeah, the 3D printed thrusting tip is really fantastic. It's like it's a fantastic piece of technology.
It looks like it should like.
I've got a yeah.
It looks like a squeaker.
It does look like a squeaker. It's not hollow at all. It's like, well, I mean, it's got tiny pockets in it, the whole thing, because it's like a matrix, it's like a 3-dimensional grid, like but yeah, it's really squishy, and it doesn't have bits that fall out of it, and it's the same compression all the way through. They don't have solid bits, and because I remember I used to use foam, and like sometimes I put a leather wrap around the outside to make sure it doesn't rip off. But when you got that, sometimes it makes the wall too hard, so then you're basically hitting people with a cookie cutter if you get like the wrong thickness of leather. And so it's like I used to just make little blocks of foam which I would tape onto the top, and if they rip off, that's fine. I just have 3 more in my bag that I tape on. But this 3D printed thrusting tip is really a marvel. They're really wonderful things. The only issue is that you've got to get them made to the.
I'm sorry. Does he make that?
The only issue is that you got.
Does he make that
I don't think so. I think he's trying to make a business out of it.
Okay.
So yeah, but and I don't think he's producing right now because this is all busted, and I thought I'd ask him if he has another one that I could buy, but he doesn't have any right now. But I understand he's getting back into it. So there's that. It's got a steel basket hilt. Pretty fairly simple design. Actually, I'll bring my other sword up for a moment.
You use a lanyard and not a trigger.
This is my poly. I do use a lanyard, not a trigger. And this is a basket hilt designed by Master Marcus Waffenmeister, and it's quite spare. And I think this was actually designed by him, but made by his apprentice, who's Master Alfgeir Agnarsson, and he's a pelican who we elevated in our first reign. But like that's not why I have this basket hilt. This basket hilt was made before then. But I love these steel basket hilts. I think they're much better than the plastic ones. I think a a heavy counterweight is like works for me a lot better than the plastic ones, which are lighter. And yeah, I have a lanyard, which is it's a bit of leather sort of looped into itself, and that's the same on both ends. And that was a design by Duke Cornelius. I found it pretty elegant, so that's what I use. That's about it, I think.
Is there like a mathematical reason you go for 34 and a half?
Yes, because I was taught by Sir Damon that if you stand up like upright with your knees locked rather than the usual in stance thing, and you sweep your stick down past as close to your leg as you can manage it, with it pointed out as much as convenient, you should not touch the ground. And that's so when you're doing parrying down by your leg close, then you can do that without like the stick, without the stick being interfered with. And so that really has worked for me. So Damon, of course, has passed now, but he taught me that, and that's a bit of knowledge I treasure. Of course, I usually add a thrusting tip, which means that sometimes it does drag a little bit, but I'm not normally parrying right next to my foot, so it's not usually too much of a problem.
Did you say that you brought your bow too, or that you were going to bring it and you didn't?
I did bring it.
All right, let's look at it.
Okay, so this is my bow, and it is, in actual fact, is not my combat bow, but it's quite like my combat bow. What this is a bow that Sir Agro and Mistress Glenivard gave to Alfred, my wife, and I on the occasion of our first reign. We stepped up and they gave it to us on our coronation day. And it's a Grosja, which is a highly regarded bow. It's sinew on the front, and sinew and horn with like a wood layer in between. And it's combat legal at 30 pounds. It's a lovely bow. It feels like 25 pounds to draw. So it's not the one I use in combat. I use a Korean short bow for combat, which was given to me by a guy we called Reynard Fitzrenard, and he's also a member of the Lochac Company of Archers, and he's a guy I used to sing with in choir, and kind of when he stopped doing combat archery, he gave me his bow, because it was like it was moderate. He said it's because it was moderately old when at the time he gave it to me, but I'm using it and it's good. I want to show you the Lochac arrow, which is a new thing. So we have that. There is a 3/4 inch rubber blunt, so that's 18 millimeters across, and that's the size of the blunt there. It's a rubber. We have it. There's a pattern. There's a couple of molds, and they are held by some people who mold them. There's a couple of vendors in Lochac that sell these. There's a wooden shaft covered in fiberglass, plastic fletchings, 4 in a not exactly cross shape, and a plastic knock. And these are made for me by Rafe the Mossad. Sorry, no, hang on. My guy who's in the Lochac Company of Archers, Rafe, Captain Rafe, really, I suppose, because the Lochac Company of Archers have taken on Captain as their title. So Captain Rafe makes all my combat arrows, and he is really great at it. I've been convincing him to write a document on how to make arrows, but it's coming along. Yeah, and so they're the weapons I use in war and tournament. I didn't bring a shield, as I said. I got a rectangular center grip shield, and I also have a round. The round is 2 foot wide. It's 60 centimeters wide, because that's the size of the half sheet of aluminum you can get, and that's edged in pinch weld and then rawhide. That's what I do for my shields. I think rawhide is a really fantastic shield edging. It's stiff, it's light, it lasts for a long time.
Yeah, that's what we use. Love it. All right, well, let's do the final 10 then.
Okay.
What event have you never gone to that you would like to go to?
I'd like to go to Raglan Fair, and this event in Drakenwald. I understand they hold it in a castle. Like, yeah, that if you're gonna like, if you're into medieval, like medieval European thing, that's the thing that's gonna feel the realest. So yeah, we want to go there, and we've never visited Europe, so we'll probably, if in the occasion that we finally make it, we'll probably take a big trip and see lots of places.
Very cool. If you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
So my answer to this is Viscount Sir Gawain. He is my late squire brother who passed away in January 2004. He was the last prince of Lochac, and he and I were offered knighthood at the same time. I got knighted at 12th Night, and he got knighted at Rohini Festival in that same year. And it's been a long time, and I miss him, and I wish I could fight him. As far as people who are alive, well, I'm pretty much have only fought like Lochac people, so and a few people in the wars at Pennsic. So I'd like to have some more one-on-one time with some of the great fighters of the known world. That would be lovely.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Do you have a favorite Pennsic story?
I do. When I went to Pennsic, I entered the combat archery scenario, because I could. There was no armored combat happening at that time. Well, sorry, there wasn't any armored melee combat happening at the time. So I went into the combat archery scenario, and it was really funny because you'd have heavy fighters there, but they weren't like armed. They had shields, so they'd wander around in shield walls, and they could protect archers. And I think maybe the queen of like Astior or something brought along some rocks. So I think they were actually toilet rolls wrapped in gaff tape. And the funniest thing was being able to pick up these rocks, follow like a shield wall. So you'd have an archer. I picked up a rock at one time and directed a shield wall to go move me near to these other people. And then I just once you get close enough, we have in Lochac a 5 meter rule. You can't shoot from closer than 5 meters, so the 5 yard rule, and you can't shoot at them as well. But they didn't have that at Pennsic, so you had these shield walls walking right up to another shield wall, and then you basically stood behind your shield wall. You'd jump up and you'd do a dunk shot and throw this toilet roll at someone else, and it was hilarious. It was just, we're used to because our archery is frankly so effective. We've got this thing where we don't get all that close. When you get close, it's because you're chasing down an archer because you want them to expect it, you want them to yield. But apart from that, we don't get all that close. And walking straight up to these people and throwing a toilet roll at them, that was the funniest thing ever. That is my favorite Pennsic story that I had an experience in. And there was an embarrassing one too, so I'm left-handed and I shoot left-handed. And there was one war scenario that I was doing combat archery, but because the standard SCA combat arrows, they've got this anti-bounce back device, which is new to me, but I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about. But basically means you can get left-handed and right-handed arrows. And I'm a left-handed shooter, and there aren't all that many left-handed arrows to go around. So Baroness Amelin, a friend of mine, organized the loan of some archery, some arrows for this, but they couldn't get all that many left-handed arrows. So I had a bunch of left-handed arrows and a bunch of right-handed arrows. And you use them differently because the anti-bounce back device will interfere with it'll get caught on the string and whatnot if you're shooting it the wrong way. So I end up doing a bunch of shooting kind of on the wrong side of the bow. And I'm as I said, I'm not a fantastic combat archer anyway, but using wrong-handed arrows meant that my archery was really terrible. And there was one scenario that to my shame, I shot the marshal twice with arrows using the wrong side of the. I shot him in the back twice because these arrows just weren't going the way I was sending it. So I thought I was shooting at this unit with because of spear dudes, I'm a spear god. But you know what? Not a lot of protection, so shoot at them. But these arrows were not going where I wanted to, and I shot the marshal twice.
That's
and
hilarious.
Turned around and I hid.
That's hilarious.
So that's my embarrassing story, and it's good that comes out because otherwise people might think I'm cool.
Okay. So who are your favorite people to watch fight?
These days I would like to watch my squires fight because I really my goal now I've made it into the dukedom, and I don't particularly I haven't made it a priority to get into fence, so I'm I can't see mod being in my future. I'm not actually, I'm not actually studious enough to be a laurel, so that's probably not going to happen. So I'm basically done getting me to where I want to be, and now all I want to do is have some grand squires. I want to have some of my squires knighted, so I want to see them fight. And I've got my squires are actually spread out a bit around the country. And when I say the country, I also mean that I've got one in Thailand.
Oh wow!
So I don't get to see him fight. I don't get to see my guys fight a lot. So I'd like to watch them fight. In terms of like the actual fighting, probably the guy that I like to see most right now is Duke Felix. He is an incredible fight to watch. So him.
Yeah. He's also an incredible armorer.
That too.
Yep.
Too.
Do you have a hero or a mentor in the SCA, and if so, who is it?
Alpha, my knight, has really been guiding hand. So he's done a lot of reigns. He's done 5 Principality reigns and 3 Kingdom reigns. So he knows a lot. I would not have been able to do so. Our first reign of the Principality of Lochac would have been an absolute disaster if not for his advice. And he's the guy that I speak to. And now we co-run. I like to think we co-run his household. So yeah, he's a guy.
Cool. Very cool. If you had to recommend one event in your kingdom for someone out of kingdom to go to, which one would it be?
Okay, well, it's going to be Rowaney Festival but I mean, everyone from Lochac's going to say Rowaney Festival because it's our big thing. But I'm actually going to recommend a different event, which is an event called Panther Hunt, and it's in a shire called the Dismal Fogs, which is the Blue Mountains, so just on the western border of Sydney. And that's actually mainly an archery event, but also it's very child friendly. So they got lots of kids there that do kids archery, and Rafe has been running an event where he makes costumes for armored fighters to go out and get shot at by kids and by adults. So I've done that, and it's huge fun. It's called the Panther Hunt because there's been a legend, like a mundane legend, about this feral panther that's in the Blue Mountains. So there's, in the real world, there's this legend about this panther, like in the Blue Mountains. And so this event has come up, and we have the Panther Hunt, and we have you'll get armored combatants like put on their gear and go down and dance around and be targets for everyone at the event. And there's a lot of little kids and a bunch of like big kids and a bunch of adults, like all shooting their shootingness, combat arrows. You get shot a lot. Sometimes it really hurts, but it's a fantastic event. Very child friendly. I've got a couple of kids now, so that's pretty important to me. Yeah, it's really nice. It's great fun. They're a lovely little group. I love it. Panther Hunt.
It's really cool.
And it runs in May, I think. Runs in May or June, or it has. They're still working out a new site because the original site was recently, the lease wasn't renewed by the group that was hosting it, so they're having to find a new site. And then the pandemic, so I'm looking forward to if it happens again, and if it doesn't happen, I'll be very sorry, but that's the way that happened.
Yeah, that's very cool. I love that there's a kid-focused element to that. What book do you think everyone on the path to knighthood should read?
Okay, so I think a vastly important thing for people to read on their way to being a peer is the Laws of the Kingdom and Corpora. Because if you don't know how things work, you can't teach people how things work. And I think that's a really important part of the peerage. So it's more SCA focused in this case than it is, historical recreation. But they are the things. I should say every peer should know the laws and know how the processes work, and that involves Corpora. So they're the two things I think all the peers should know.
I agree. I actually think when we first started in the SCA, the people that brought us in told us that we had to read the law and Corpora, and I think we all did that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I know peers who have never read it, so I think it's really important.
Yeah, I do too. Or at least I know peers. I know peers that seem not to have read it because they don't They don't like they're great at what they do. They're great at that their area of focus, but they don't know how it all ties. They don't seem to know how it all ties together and how to get stuff done or how things are. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird, and I'm all for people being focused on their interest group. That's fine, but the peerage is about running the kingdom as if you were a parent looking after the family of the kingdom.
That's a really good analogy.
So
I love that.
yeah, I that's always in my head, and I really hope it's not too paternal, because I don't want people to think that I think that people who aren't peers are kids, because that's not at all true. But yeah, I mean, one of the things about peers is that you've got to look out for stuff that people don't expect, right? You don't just look at things in your wheelhouse. You got to go, well, in my community, be it your barony, your shire, your kingdom, in my community, what could be made better? What needs doing? Where are the weaknesses? And I guess that's how I got into service from coming from pretty much a fighting interest, because I read because Alpha was Prince so many times, right? He was always doing stuff about that involved being close to or abiding by or whatever the laws, and so I kind of learned how to support him in that, and laws and ceremonies and learning how things are done. So I guess that's where. So he's a pelican too. He's a pelican, obviously, way before me.
I like the parental analogy from the aspect of setting up the game for the next generation and making sure that things are set up so that our successors can succeed in this game.
Yeah, really. I think that period taught me a bit about being a parent too, which was kind of handy.
It goes both ways. Parenting teaches a little bit how to be a parent.
At least they're the same in my head. They might not be the same in other people. That's fine.
Okay. What is your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
The Princess Bride by William Goldman. I love that, because I'm a cheesy pun-loving nerd.
What is your favorite in-kingdom tradition?
In-kingdom tradition. I even know this. We have so it's probably gonna be that at Roni Festival. It used to be halfway through War Day, the Sunday, which was Roni Festival used to be held at Easter, and Easter Sunday was War Day, so people who could only make it for the weekend could make it to the war. And halfway through, we'd have a kids versus knights combat. So we would have knights. All the knights would. So the queen would rally all the kids, and they all had buffer weapons, all foam weapons, and the knights would be armed likewise or not armed or whatever. And we would hold the kids' fort, and the kids would charge in and kill us all. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, get hit with buffers a lot, and the kids don't necessarily respect you saying that shots are good, so they hit you while you're down. And there has been occasions in the past where all the knights were given little bags of chocolate Easter eggs to hide upon their persons, and the kids were notified of this, so they'd bowl over the knights and hit them until they stopped moving, and then ransack their bodies for little bags of Easter eggs. And there was one time when the chivalry peerage meeting was being held at lunchtime on the Sunday, and sometimes peerage meetings run over time. I mean, I'm sure that's a surprise to everyone, but that happens. And I remember there was one year that the Queen set up a chant of the kids were all calling us cowards because we wouldn't leave this little campsite where the chivalry meeting was. So they were calling down this hill that we were all, we're all cowards, and why are we waiting? And it was kind of funny and embarrassing and pretty cool. It's good memory. Good memory. I think that was Queen Yolande, actually. She's cool.
I think at our On-Tier West War that we actually have the toilet paper rocks things, and there is a battle where the kids throw them at all the combatants, and it's kind of a cool little thing that we do.
Yeah, actually, that at Penzig, that wasn't the first time I'd seen it. There was I practiced down in Stormhold, so that's Melbourne in Victoria in Australia, where I just happened to be in town for an event, and they had a war practice the next day, a gathering kind of tournament war thing day, and they actually did that. So they had like a cricket pitch, so fairly like 2 meters wide and however long, and they had two teams of heavy fighters at each end. They had to fight, but on the sides, like slightly out of range, you'd have people like with toilet paper rocks, and they threw it at whoever. Like it didn't matter. And now actually we do something similar at our war practices, where we have what's called peasant archery, where we have people who are unarmored up at the archery line, and they have combat arrows, and they can shoot at the people practicing down on the field. So I've done some combat archery training with small units, like very small, like 3 aside. You have these little sortie units trying to kill each other, and all the while there's the occasional shot coming in from the side, because we face perpendicular to them, so our arrows don't hit the people who are unarmored, but they are shooting at us. And sometimes they are like, and our war practice follows on from target practice. So there's some people who are really good at archery, and they can get like every pound out of their 30-pound bows, and like you get stung pretty hard. But so Rowan does this peasant archery along those same lines, except with arrows that hurt more.
Cool. All right. So last question. What do you think is the most important trait to become a successful fighter?
I'd say the most important is self-discipline and self-motivation. If you don't want to do it, and you can't teach yourself to keep working at it, you won't get there. And certainly that was my failing until as I say, until Uther came out. I wasn't properly motivated. Like I was motivated in small ways, because Alpha would be disappointed if I was bad at fighting at our practices. But in hindsight, that was the extent of my motivation. I wanted to do okay by the people I was with, but like I didn't care enough about being good against everybody until I realized that there was a higher place. I guess maybe at that point I didn't think I could be a knight. So I just thought of myself as a squire, and I realized, hey, all I got to do is kill everybody, and then I can be a knight. Well, let's go do that. Yeah. So self-discipline and motivation. In fact, discipline is probably more important than motivation, because you only need motivation until discipline kicks in. Like you go, I want to do this thing there, I need to do this thing. But after a while, you go, this thing is a thing that I do. I will do this thing.
Yeah, so, they feed off of each other, right? Like the more you do something, the more motivated you are to continue. So
I'm pretty sure that's not motivation. I think that's discipline. The more you do a thing, the more you know that it's a thing that you do and you have to do, so you do it. Yeah, habit is discipline.
Yeah, and there's nothing like success to make you even more motivated.
Absolutely, but even without success, I think discipline can work even without success. Maybe discipline works better without success. I don't know.
I guess I should know that, because I don't consider myself successful yet. But yeah.
If you don't have success, then discipline is what discipline what helps you build success. I guess maybe subordinate to that slightly is self-analysis. So a lot of people have problems where they think they know, right? And sometimes they don't know, because it's obvious they don't know, because it doesn't work, or something's not working, but people don't say to themselves, this is not working, let's do a thing. So that turns out that is the bane of a bunch of knights, because it's they call it the butt eye. I think they call it the butt eye, where you're telling someone, you're teaching someone, and you say, look, you are doing this thing and it's not working, and they go, oh, but I'm trying to do this thing. There's a reason for why they're failing, and it's not them. So like
we call that the yeah buts.
Yeah, the yeah but. Oh, exactly, that's it. The yeah but. Right. Like being able to look at yourself like as objectively as you can, see the failures, see that the failures are opportunities to learn. Like accept that they are failures and that they are opportunities to learn, right? Because you can't talk your opponent to death. You gotta put some stick on it.
Exactly. Well, very cool. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I've had a super fun time. It was really great to chat with you. And I hope someday we get over to Australia and to Roni and we get to meet in person and actually fight. That would be fun.
That's really, I appreciate that. And like, I don't, because my geography is terrible. So I'm not really very clear on where Ontario is, but I will make an effort to visit when it's possible.
I live in Seattle.
Oh, right, yeah.
So,
I've got an uncle in
the
Seattle.
northwestern part of the United States.
I'm in Vancouver, so we're at opposite ends of Washington State.
Oh, okay. Oh, wonderful. I've got an uncle who lives there, so I should probably visit.
Oh, well, if you ever visit, we will put together practice for you.
You're the first person I'll look up.
All right, cool. All right, thank you everyone else for joining us. Wednesday, we are talking to Sir Raymond the Quiet, Raymond's Quiet Press. That should be fascinating. He is one of the most prolific metalworkers I think I've ever seen, and he just does things from all the different periods, and really a pretty amazing guy when you look at his OP. I think he's a triple peer. So that should be super cool.
And Tuesday on Branch of Laurels, I'm interviewing Olivier de Bayonne from Atlantia, who is a Bardic poetry laurel, but he's also one of my big Scythian research inspirations right now. He's constantly sending me academic articles, so I expect that there will be much geeking on Scythian culture. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, so if you're into it, check that one out. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. Thank you again, Your Grace, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Rivkin. Thank you, Ashanti.
Yep.